Hi there, my name's Alistair Kennedy and I'm the Sociable social worker, and I give practical advice to social workers and those wanting to foster and adopt. And in this video we're going to look at adoption. How do you tell children that they're adopted? So if you've watched any of my other videos, my subscribers will all know that I was fostered and then I adopted. And my adoption experience was really positive. So don't worry, this isn't going to be a sad story about a boy called Alistair or anything like that. It's going to be quite a nice positive story about how you tell young people or children that they're adopted. So today's video actually came from an idea from my mum. She found a book that she used to read to me when I was a child, and it's called Mr and Mrs Fairweather, and it talks about adoption in the simplest terms. And this is the book. It's made in pastel colours. It's beautifully written. I have to say it's written by a social worker, and it is beautifully written. And actually I found out on the internet that the social worker is still alive. She's 102. It would be amazing if I could find her and talk to her about this book. And she wrote several other books as well. And it's painted in very pastel colours. It's very much of its time. There is no reference to social workers particularly in it. It's just a woman who Mr and Mrs Fairweather meet. And basically the premise of the story is Mr and Mrs Fairweather are married. They think that there's something missing in their life, so they get a cat, and then they get a dog, then they get a budgie, and then they think, no, something's not right, we need something else. Oh, I know, what we need is a baby. So they go to the doctor and nothing happens, and then they decide to go to a woman, a nameless woman. I don't know what her name was, actually it's in here somewhere. She's got quite a strange name. Mrs Downing. So they go to Mrs Downing, and Mrs Downing takes them to a place that's full of babies. And they go to see a baby in a cot, and they say, oh, that's a lovely baby, but it's not for us. Oh, wow. It's not for us. And I mean, anyway, it's a strange one. It's not for us. I don't know what was wrong with the baby. Poor baby standing there in its nappy going, hiya, how you doing? I'm all right. But they didn't take that baby. So months and months go by, and then Mrs Downing phones up again and they say, I've got the baby for you. So like Pets at Home, they go back and they see another baby and they choose that baby. And the baby comes to their house with Mrs Downing, and eventually the baby grows up, and then they get another baby. The boy goes to visit the other baby and they say, oh, it's great, and everybody lives happily ever after. And it's a really nice story. It's gently written. Hand-painted colours. It was only 90p in 1970. I had to buy it. I had to buy the other book to this, the second book. It was £14 at my second-hand bookstore. My mum got told by the social worker that this would help you, and that was as much post-adoption support as my mum said she got. So there you go. She got a book and she got me. So in this video, I'm not just going to talk about the book, but actually the premise still stands in the book. It's a really nice way to tell children how they're adopted. And the fact that I was told very early on in my life that I was adopted meant an awful lot to me. There was no secrets, there was nothing hidden about it, and that it was really important for me to be able to find my own identity as an adoptee. I'm now going to give you some tips on telling your child that they're adopted. If you want to skip further to the end, there are further tips on how to tell children in certain age brackets that might help you, and I've broken it down into fives, mid and teenagers, so if you want to skip to the end you can. So how do you tell children that they're adopted? Now, you heard me before saying that I was told very early on in my life, and that helped with my identity as an adoptee. And I believe that you should always tell children when they're very young. You don't want to risk them finding out from a friend or a family member, or the fact that, as all kids do, we all go raking for Christmas presents and we come upon birth certificates, or we come upon pictures or notes or reports or something, if we can read them, and we find out the truth from that. And that could be very hurtful for a young person or a child to find that information out just from finding it. Be really positive about the child coming to live with you. And my mum always tells a story that I arrived in a Cortina, in a blue Cortina with a horrible layette, and that she just looked into my eyes and had big blue eyes, and she just said that she knew that I was the one, and that was a really positive story for me to hold on to. And she was always really positive about that throughout my childhood. Explain to them that being adopted does not mean they are loved any less than a child who's still with their birth parents, and that's really important. If you don't have a storybook like Mr and Mrs Fairweather, well, ask your social worker if they can do some storytelling, or you can make a scrapbook, or you might even have a live storybook that's came with the child if the child's a bit older. And that would just, those early pictures are really good to explain what adoption means to a child. So for example, from my own childhood, I have very few pictures of me as a very young baby, and I wish I did, but it's not to be. But it would have been nice to have a little scrapbook or whatever. But nowadays, you know, life story work is very prevalent. So speak to your social worker, speak to the agency, and they might be able to sort that all out for you. Be really positive to your child about their adoption, because it needs to be part of their own identity. I said that earlier on, that it was easier for me when I was told early, because it can be part of my identity as being an adoptee. And also be sensitive when they're upset. If they ask you loads of questions about their adoption, just be calm and listen to them, react later, and think about it. You need to be prepared for this. You need to be prepared for those questions. What are you going to say? If you're finding it hard to talk to your child or listen to your child about adoption, don't show it. They don't need to know that you're finding it hard. Your child will pick up on that and feel that their adoption is maybe a bad thing and something that you don't want to talk about, and may shut down. So put your feelings to one side and just listen. Nowadays, a lot of adoptions, my adoption was a closed adoption, but most adoptions now are pretty much open adoptions. Some are just letterbox contact. But if there's a truth to be told, tell the child when they're young if there's some issues. Don't hide the fact that their mum or their dad couldn't cope. Just make sure you always tell the truth. It might be very hurtful to them, but maybe sometimes you do need to hold back on some of the information that you give. For example, if they were drug users or alcoholics or have a very chaotic lifestyle, but you can put it into words that children will understand and be age appropriate. If your child wants to talk about their adoption, then give them the time to do it without interruptions. And when I say interruptions, it's all the electronic devices that we might have phones on. So put it on airplane mode, put it on do not disturb. Remember, if your child gets angry, it's a really natural reaction, and they're probably just feeling confused and upset, but you need to give them the time to listen. Well, this is part of the video where I talk about how do you tell children at different stages in their development. Now, most children at different ages will react differently. Very young children under 5 probably won't really understand the word adoption, but they might understand the word care, and they might understand the words forever family. So those might be useful to mention rather than adoption. After the age of 5, it gets tricky. You get those conversations that all children have about where the babies come from, and did I come from mummy's belly, and those kind of conversations, and how and why does the world spin. So it can be quite tricky, but I think what you have to do is keep the conversation as simple as possible. Mid-childhood, and by mid-childhood I mean 9+. If you've adopted children at babies, and you haven't told them by the age of 9, well, be prepared for some tantrums, and they might be quite upset, and maybe rightly so, because you haven't told them. As I said, tell them when they're very young and just make it part of their identity. So maybe you do prepare yourself beforehand for the questions that they're going to ask. And as I say, adoption should never be a secret, but every youngster needs to have an honest understanding of their origin. And all adopted children, we've kind of got this nagging intuition, I don't know, that sometimes influences your self-image though. And the longer you wait, the harder it is to discuss with your child. That's just my opinion, of course. And obviously they should never find out from a school friend or the school or grandparents, as I said before. So the last 2 points are more from a psychological point of view about adoption. I know social worker talking about psychology. Some psychologists that I've read about adoption say that you shouldn't say to a child that they're lucky, and you're setting up a situation where they feel obligated to you, so they might not want then to talk about their adoption. From my point of view as a social worker, I think, as my mum did, she always said that she was the lucky one to have me in her life. And I think that's important for adopters to say, we're the lucky ones, you came to us. And the other point was about telling children that they're special. Now, this is a strange one from psychologists, and I'm not sure about it. I do another video where I say about adoptees telling adopters what they should know, and I talk about being special in it. And psychologists say, though, it sounds harmless and loving. If young children are told too many times that they're special, they'll have to be special to maintain their parents' love. In other words, that they find that their parents' love is kind of contingent on their specialness, and that could mean that a child tries overly hard to be, the best athlete or the best person at school, or I don't know, the best musician. I don't know. I think people should do what my mum did, which was just say, allow your child to be whoever he was going to be, and that he was always special. And my mum always said to me, like I said before, I came to her, my big blue eyes, and I was special. I'm special to her, she's special to me. Comment down below if you think being special is something that we should tell adoptees. I think it is. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but that's what the psychologists say. So there you go, some gentle advice on telling children that they're adopted. Sometimes you might need to seek out other adopters, and group situations can be useful. And I used to go to a group session with Bernardos, and Bernardos are really good at providing post-adoption support to adopters and adoptees. So I would encourage people to seek out any therapeutic services that you can. Talking to your child is going to be uncomfortable, and it might be really hard, but the more you talk about it, the more comfortable you'll become, and the more comfortable your child will be at asking really difficult questions that are really important to them. If you fumble and you can't answer the questions, or you don't know, just admit your mistake. And what matters the most is that you're attuned to your child and the experiences that they might have had. There obviously is an alternative. There are closed adoptions still, or you just don't tell your child that they're adopted. Now, that's probably for another video, but let me know in the comments if a video on closed adoptions would be of interest to you. So whatever part of your journey you're on in adoption, I wish you the best of luck, and thanks for your time.